Hi everyone, this is Liesl from Artist Palette. We are doing the Fireflies, the Galaxy and Fireflies painting. You can pull up the picture if you want to as you're painting. I find that with this one, you just want to do more of the colors that you're feeling for the background in the Galaxy. I tried something different. Instead of doing more of like a textured dabbing look, I did more of like a smoother, streaky look to make it look like some like fiery gases or some sort of nebula galaxy different type of vibe. So I'm just going to go over what I normally use for my painting events, and I'll tell you what you can bring in addition to this for paint colors if you want. So I have a detailed brush. You can use a number 0, something smaller, or a number 2. And then I have a couple medium round brushes that I like to use for the fiery, streaky look that I put diagonally into the sky. And maybe for, I don't know, any other details you want to use for like the mountain in the background. And then I have a smaller flat brush here. This is about a number 4, and it's good for making the grass. It could be good for making the thin lines as well in the sky and for trees. Okay, and so that's all I really use for the brushes. I do have it painted black. You can buy one black or you can pre-paint it black and make sure that it dries too. And then for paint, I have white, black, bright red, which is the non-orange kind, yellow, so bright yellow, or you can use more of a primary yellow, phthalo blue. You can also use a pre-mixed, if you have a bottle of maybe magenta, you can use a smidge of that instead of having to mix everything. So you can have a little bit of magenta here. Okay, whatever, I'm just not going to use it, but you saw the color. And violet or purple. So you can also have a pre-mixed purple. So you can have that handy on the side if you like. Just for the fun of it, if you want to have a orange red or just a straight orange as well. Whoops, okay, that was a lot. So yeah, any colors if you want to use them, you can bring them in. All right. So you can pause, take your time throughout this video. And I think we can get started. I am starting with my smaller round brush. I'm going to start with some streaks of color into the sky. So sometimes a little bit of playing around. Just do the colors that you prefer. You don't need to worry too much about what I'm doing. I kind of just made it up as I went. I did start with a light color, so I just dipped it in the water. And in terms of this light color, I did, if you want to use orange, you can, but you can start with just a little bit of yellow and red about equal parts, maybe a touch more red than yellow. A scoop of white. And it kind of gives this like light salmon peachy cream color. Really up to you what you want to do for the background, but I didn't put too much yellow because I wanted to streak some like purpley colors, blues, and if it's more on the red side, it's better to blend than if you have too much yellow. Yellow starts changing colors to more of a green color or brownish color. So this is what I went with. All right, so with that touch of water, pick up some of that paint. I'm just swirling my brush in here so it stays a bit pointy on the end. And one of the main things is the sky starts pretty low down, and then I put all of that mountain grassy hill stuff on top. So I am going to start pretty low, and I'm just going to do stuff like that. I'm just going to streak it out. Just kind of streak it out, flick it out this way. Get a base going. See how they're kind of wavy? I'm even going to go up towards the top. I'm going to get lots of this filled in here. It's okay if it picks up a bit of that black. Just mixing a little more. It starts going up diagonally like that. But a lot of it's filled in at the bottom. So I'm trying not to go over it too much because, like I said, it will start picking up black and just making it really gray. So wash it off. Take a little bit more again. This time I'm just going to bring some of them out a little bit more this way. And I will say, for a little while, this looked a little bit odd. I was very unsure about it. Okay, so that's one color started. We're not going to touch anymore. If you have a blow dryer handy, you can also just use that pretty often. The next thing that I did was just getting some sort of like light bluey colors over here. So a touch of blue, big scoop of white, very light blue, and it went, so over here, it kind of just went to the edge. Just put it all in there. I'm going to use a little bit of a bigger brush now. Just get it filled in a lot quicker as well. And just kind of streak it in, sort of wavy. Okay. So that's what I have at the moment. Wash those off. I didn't go to the very top up here. I did go to the very edge over here. But what I did after this is I took, so you wash it off and you just kind of dab it dry so that it's not too watery now. So I sort of took more of like a dark color with no white, so that on top of the black it still looks dark, and it kind of fades the edges a little bit too. So if I take, for example, just straight blue, and let's say I just go up this way, see on top of the black, you don't really see it. So this is going to help us with the fading. This is going to help a lot with making it look like there's a lot of contrast from super light to really dark in the corner. If you add in some red with a little bit of blue, so mostly red and some blue, you get a super dark purple. And on the ends, for example, of these, see, I can just go on the ends of this, and as I go over top of some of my lighter colors, it just kind of fades out. Helps darken the ends a little bit, softens it up. So that is a very good technique for this painting specifically. And since it's black in the background, you can actually just streak in black again. But save that for later, because once you put black and other colors, it starts turning very messy and gray. If you add a touch of white to, so if you add the tiniest dot of like this light blue, for example, into your purple, maybe a bit more red if you want it more purpley, like pinkish purple or just more violet. See, like tiniest little dot here. You can see it better on your canvas. See, now it's a little bit obvious. So it's still quite dark. And I won't say that this technique is super easy. It's like you can easily get lost in this and get frustrated, which I hope does not happen to you, but I'm just letting you know, it's when I first made this, I may or may not have almost wanted to throw it in the garbage, but you just have to just keep it going. Don't give up too easily. So I'm just darkening the edges. See, I'm just darkening the edges. I can easily go back to black, but I'm going to hold off a little bit before I start going back to any black. I want to use some of that blue. So over here I had it a bit more bluish. You don't have to get every little inch and section filled in, for example, but I can take this blue and touch of red and just go over some of like the ends over here. And just like wavy lines, kind of streaking it in a little bit. I can bring it in a little bit further sometimes. So this is not going to look exactly the same as I made the first one. I'm not going to make it exactly the same. I'm just going to do roughly what I've done and see what comes out of it. Maybe what I'll do here, so since I darkened up those edges and you can streak them in a little bit lower so it breaks up all of this color, I'm going to let this dry for another minute or two. So while that's drying, I'm going to do maybe a bit of bluish teal or green over here. So if you were wanting to do some of that, scoop of blue, not going as bright. I want it to be more subtle. So I'm going to take a big scoop of blue, so it's much darker now, right there. Then a touch of yellow, small little touch, so it goes a little bit teal in color. So I'm wiping off a little bit of the paint down here, and then I'll take a touch of water and just kind of do some of these streaky, wavy bits. Just a couple of these. Okay. Wash that off. Wash it off. Then I'm going to take my dark blue again and just go over the bottom. See how it's on top of the black with no white added to the color? It's harder to see and it can fade things out. I can just smooth that out. And I have a hint of blue now, dark blue going through my sky. Kind of cool. So when you wipe off all the paint, you lightly glaze. So you just barely touch the canvas. You can get like just a hint of this color streaking through your sky. So just a small hint of that. And just washing that off again. Maybe I'll add a little bit of green, just for the fun of it. So if you're thinking of adding green, more yellow, another scoop of yellow, wipe off a bit of this paint. Maybe I'll want some green here, just lightly go over it. If you find that you're picking up black, probably just stop. I think I'm just picking up some black. I'm going to stop there. I can touch it up in a bit. So I just go back and forth through all these sections, back and forth, back and forth. This is pretty much dry. And when I do another coat on top of here, you're not going to see all of that gray coming through. It just becomes more and more vibrant. I would be careful with taking too much water. So if you take a lot of water and you put it on, you go over it again, you might pick up the gray again. So just make sure it's pretty dry. I'm going to go back to, so lots of white and my creamy peach color. So it's very light. You can add more yellow if you want to, or more pink, but I did it more on the pink side. I'm not going to dip in the water right now. So I'm going to add this in. There we go. If I keep going over those same spots, it will start picking up the gray again. Just be careful when you're adding a touch of water if needed. If it's really dry, just add a small touch and continue. Just press really light. Making sure this is kind of all filled in. Maybe I'll add a bit more white. Maybe I want to go a little bit lighter. So I'm going to do it nice and wavy. Maybe this time I'll go back up here. And just kind of flick and pull away as you go upwards. So starting from here, flick and pull away. Even if you put more than you want, so say for example I put a bunch up here and I don't really want it all up there, I can just go over it with dark purple again. Dark colors easily cover light colors. Small touch of water. Yellow, red. Put some in here, a couple streaks. So if I add a bit more red into here, it just naturally goes more pinkish, slightly with that. Even with a touch of yellow, it still looks very pink, but you can just do pink without the yellow, and it can look more like coral if you have a little bit more yellow in there, or salmon. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just put some pink in, just to put in a little bit of that. I think it complements some of the purple too. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna do some more purples. So before I go back to blue here, I'm just gonna wait a minute because I don't need to mess around too much with that at the moment. I don't want it to turn greenish or mess around with colors and make it too blended. I want it not too blended. All right. So I'm just waiting a minute for that to sit. Try not to rush it. I'll probably put in a little bit of some brighter purple, and then I can always go back and put in some dark colors. So the brighter purple, some red, touch of blue, mostly red, a little scoop of white. You got some purple. That was red. Or you can, if you have a premix purple, excellent. A little bit of white. So it's kind of like a lavender sort of color. And if I go over some of my light spots, it just goes purple. Or if I go in new spots, it still looks pretty purple. So it's kind of great. I'm just going to sweep that in. Sometimes intertwine a little. So that's what I did. Sometimes I intertwined it a bit. Maybe I'll add a bit more purple. So that's more about 2 parts red, 1 part blue. It goes a little bit darker. I'm just going to sweep it in. I don't mind if it goes a little bit in with some of these colors. Notice how I'm not blending. I'm not trying to go over and over and over it. A bit more purple over here. Put a little bit of purple in on this side. And now I'm going to go to my dark purple. So I don't want any white. White will make it much lighter. So 2 parts red, 1 part blue. Get a bit more red. And I have this really dark purple here. It almost looks black, but it's not. If I start out in the black section, it's hard to see, and then you sweep it in. You sweep it in. I'm going to take a touch more blue. I want it more, maybe bluey this time. More of a indigo. Yeah. Here. I sweep it in on the little ends and the tails that I've made. Looks like it has a nice fade. I'm going to take more blue. So I'm just taking straight blue. I haven't washed it off. Maybe I'll put some more in here. Definitely a bit on the ends, maybe. Kind of digging that. It's pretty cool. And I've washed it off. At this point, it's just playing around. It's just playing around to your liking or to what you prefer. If you want, like right here, maybe I just want more blue, for example, more dark blue. Just some wavy bits. And just pulling it in. Maybe I want more blue in here coming in. Washing it off. Still haven't gone back to any black, and I don't know if I want to just yet, but I probably will. I'm going to use my smaller one, so you can use a smaller brush to get in some finer details, or like even a thin flat brush if you want to get into some thinner lines and pop out more of that. So what I could do with this, touch of water, small touch. Could go back to my blue, a little bit of white, or maybe a lot of white, depending on how light you want to go. Let's see, I'm going to touch more white here. Streaking it in, down at the bottom. Maybe I'll wipe off some of the paint. See if I want to put in a little bit up here. I'm going to just lightly glaze if I want it more softer and subtle. Here it is a little bit closer. I think I'll add in a little bit more of my hot pink. So red, touch of white. I don't even know if I've added that yet, but you can put in a little bit of hot pink. Just in with next to the purple, on top of the purple. Or, let's see, or any dark colors. So going back to a bit of some of my purple. Or my blue. There's a bit of blue. Still trying to do some wavy lines of them all being too straight. And I didn't mind overlap or intertwine. Touch of white, so if I take a small touch of white, it goes a little bit brighter. Okay, so I'm going to stop very shortly. It's good to know when to stop. Take some steps back sometimes. I think I'm going to add in some white to my purple. To any of your purple. Okay, so I brighten that up. And then down here, I think I'll just do one more little touch up with either adding in some orange, or if you like it the way it is, try not to change it up. Because that's how things happen and you wish you had left it alone. So you can always streak some of this back in. This is my peachy color. So if you want to add a bit of like an orange color, whoops, that has blue. I'm going to take, so if you're making orange, take a big scoop of yellow, small touch of red. Maybe we'll add in a bit of white. Since I like it kind of creamier and not too orangey, unless you want it very fiery, then you don't add really any white whatsoever. I'm just going to go from the side. So it's all collected right here. You can go as far as you want. And notice that if you do go over a lot of blue, it starts probably turning green. I'm going to touch up on my, wiping off the paint on my teal. So a touch of yellow. I kind of like that teal. And this is blue. So I'm going over the orange and I expect it to turn green, but I actually don't mind it green over here. Okay, washing this off. I'm going to do a bit of that black one more time. So when I painted the background, and if you painted the background, I'm just going to go over that. I just want to make sure that there's some brightness coming in here. Because I did put in a lot of orange. So mostly white. Even if you just put white over top of some wet colors, it tends to pick it up and just make it a bit lighter. Okay. Okay, so I think that's good. Black, if I take some black, this is just black. If I just kind of flick it in from the sides as far in as you want. Sometimes you can actually just cover some colors completely. You can even just go in between. So for example, I can just go in between some of these colors. Don't forget some water. You can just break up. You want to be careful. I wouldn't put too much. And then see, it looks a little bit glossy, but when it dries, it looks more matte, of course, and less of that really streaky look. You could also take a big scoop of blue with a touch of black if you want to change a bit more of the vibe to more of a midnight blue. So you still have it like mostly black, but it's got like that midnight blue essence in the rest of the background. So I'm just going to put that in just for the fun of it. And you might see just like that undertone of blue. So from here, what I like to do is I like to flick in my stars. So I just use the same round brush, very watery though. Flick in the stars, very watery, touch of white, kind of coat that around your brush. And it's almost like drippy. So if I just go over it all, touch water, touch of white. You can concentrate them more in one section, like right here. I'll just probably do that. I like to just aim it more so that it's going that way in a direction that it's all flowing. I think it's pretty cool that way. All right. Then after that, if you want to use the back handle of one of your smaller brushes, you can actually poke in some much bigger stars. You get that more galaxy vibe look. Alrighty, so something fun to add too, if you want. Just more of like a brighter, shinier star. It kind of looks like a bit of a firefly sort of as well, but If you don't want all of these, if you don't want too much of these stars, if you want them to be a bit more faded, you could just go over some of your paint colors. So if I go over some of my bluey colors, for example, and just paint over some of these stars, it looks like you don't really have all these stars going absolutely everywhere. However, I like it. Okay, so this is my detail brush. And you can always do this at the end as well, or do more at the end, but I'll show you what I mean. Take that watery white, so that white that I used to splatter the stars, it's just very watery. If I go around a star, rub it in, or just make a new spot. See, I'm just kind of making these little wet, watery white circles, and I poke a star in the middle, they look shiny. Just put them in random spots. So I have a couple for now, and what I would do after, use the back handle of your detailed brush again, take a little poke in there, and then dot in the middle, and it looks like it's got a bit of a glow around it. Okay, let's do it again. Poke. Okay. All right, so let me show you a little bit closer on how that's looking. So you see a little bit of that glow just around those stars. Cool. Now what I do from here, I start working on more of the foreground stuff, which is not really the foreground, but all the stuff that's lower down, like the mountain that I put, this little mountain, a field of grass where the fireflies are going to be coming out from the jar. Maybe a couple trees if you want to add in some trees. And for the mountain, I kept it pretty simple in terms of color, just a dark purpley color. You can use a round or smaller detailed brush. So if you have purple you want to use, great. Taking 2 parts red, 1 part blue, and a small touch of white. I'm going to take a little extra red actually. Dip of white. Comes up pretty violet. There. Okay. So my mountain's kind of somewhere over here. I'm going to start lower, and it just comes into the blue a little bit, and I just did some random shape for the mountain. It can be pointy, it can be rounder. Fill it in. You can fill it into the bottom if it's better. Alright, then I'm going to take blue and red, more blue and red, maybe equal parts, and I'm just going to outline that. You can use your detail brush for this, just along the top. And you can bring it a little bit lower down so it has a bit of a fade. If you want to do a second coat, you can. You can always make it a bit brighter. going to, before I do a second coat, I can just put in the black silhouette of the grass right in the front. I'm going to take black, water, and I can have this sort of start wherever I want, so somewhere around here, and it just is like a little bit bumpy and just swoops down. And I'll go a little bit higher. Fill it in. And then I'll make grass very shortly, but I'm going to do a second coat on my mountain. So I'm just washing it off. A little bit of white, touch of blue, got a purple. I can do a second coat. And if you have like a situation where it's like you've got this gap, just turn it into a mountain or grass. And I take blue and red equal parts, no white. So I could outline this mountain here. All right. So take that step back. We're going to do grass in a moment. But before we do that, when this is fully dry, you can probably have a better idea and a feel for if you want to make any touch-ups up here, anything like that at all. Especially if you want to do another coat to make it look more brighter overall. And you can easily flick stars back over top. So it's not like it's, you know, once you do the stars, it's over. You can always put more stars on top. So if I go back to a little bit of purple, wipe off some paint, I can always bring out maybe if I want more purple in my sky. Or maybe more of a pinky color, pinky purple. Maybe a bit more of some of that blue. And maybe some light peach. Yeah, and then after that, a little bit of that watery white, touch of white, very watery. And I can put in a couple extra stars. There. Okay, so making grass. You can use a flat or a round brush. If I use the flat, actually, touch of water and black paint. Use the thin side. And what I like to do is I kind of like just flick it upwards. And I do different heights. So sometimes I go taller, shorter. And I just make sure that I get all of it filled in. So that's one way to do it. And if you're doing with a round brush, don't forget water, black again. Water, black. Lightly flick it again. Maybe on this hill I'll put just a little bit. I don't really want a lot of gaps, so I kind of want to make it pretty solid. Notice how you can barely see in between some of the grass pieces except towards the top. It looks like there's an abundance of it. So instead of just doing a couple here, let's go a bit closer. I'm going to fill this in a little more. Okay, black and a bit of water. Maybe I'll do some taller pieces. Just kind of blowing over in a windy, gusty area. Water and paint, water and paint. And we'll just keep going right to wherever you want to stop it. I do add in some green. However, I like to add in green after I do the jar and the fireflies. Wash this off. You can switch to your detailed brush. So whatever small brush, I'm just using a number 2. I'm going to make the jar. Jar is pretty fun. It's all about mostly outlining, getting some highlights. So make sure it's behind a lot of this black. You can also do it against all of this, but I put it mostly down here so that the top of the jar is kind of in this area and the rest of it's in the black. Alright, so I'm just waiting a minute for that. I want it to be more or less more dry, but I'm going to work on some trees. I'm going to use my flat brush here with the black again. If you want to add in some trees, let's do it. Let's put in, so I have like this tall tree. Oops. This tall tree kind of coming up here. Maybe a small one right here. And then another sort of tallish one there to the side. I'll pull it back a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lightly tap. I like to do, there's different ways to make trees. I like to kind of angle it down a little bit, like touches with the corner, and then press harder and go longer and wider out on the way to the bottom. So light little taps, see, just up here, light little touches. Just use the tip of the brush, dab a few times, going a little bit wider out. There we go. Make it nice and pointy at the top. Let's do it again. Some light little touches up here. And leave some gaps. You can fill in the middle. So if I just dab down the middle, first of all, it gives it more of a leafy, fuller look, unless you want it more bare. But I just like to just get that. Water. And then lightly tap, leave some gaps on the way down. Bring up the branches a little bit wider and wider as I go down. Other side. So I'm just dabbing a little extra in the middle, but you can also dab a little bit more into the branches to make them thicker, so that the ends are a little bit thinner and less leafy. I'm going to bring this up a bit closer. You can see a little bit more up close some of that texture. It's all just a bunch of dabs. Alright, and this one. So dab down the middle, make it a bit leafy, and then put in these branches coming out. Smaller at the top, and a little bit wider at the bottom. So if they would overlap, we're just going to go over it a bit more towards the bottom because it would. Alright, washing this off. Now, something fun you could do, even at the end, if you have this, you can use metallic colors to make it more shiny in your sky. And I do think that if you have premixed purple, it actually makes it more vibrant, especially if you do a second coat. So before I do the jar, just taking a bit of this violet purple. If I go over anything that's purpley, it will make it look way more purple. I add a touch of white to my purple. Yes, it gets lighter. And still looks a bit more purple. Touch white, extra red maybe, if you want it more of a reddish magenta. So that's for extra vibrancy into your sky. And that goes for blue too. So an extra bit of blue with your violet or purple. It will make it look more bluey purple and add more brightness overall. I'm trying to keep it subtle. Don't really need to change the whole thing. do the jar with our detailed brush. So I did more of a mason jar. I do like to start with, I'm going to start with white. You know what? No, I'm going to start with a peach color. Yeah, I'm going to do peach and then I'll add white later. So I'm going back to my kind of my original background color, mostly white. You can add orange to it and an extra bit of red, or remember just take equal parts red and yellow, maybe a touch more red for a bit of a pinky color, and a big scoop of white. There we go. Big scoop of white, or you can have it just more orangey in general. Okay. Water, paint, water, paint. Wiping off a little extra paint, and then I want it to be somewhere around here, so let's go much closer for this step. I'm going to have the jar, it can be slightly off page or fit perfectly in here. I want it to be more like the corners kind of just hitting along this side. So I'm going to start with this, so it's like it's hitting the corner. A little bit of a bulge, so a little bit of a bump, bump. Okay. I don't mind that it's picking up black. I actually don't want it to be too solid. It's supposed to be very reflective and like a clear jar, so it's going to see a lot of the background too. There. And as I went up into here, so I have this outlined, I would wipe this off. I would actually switch to black if you're going into, I'm going to switch to black, but you don't have to get on top of this background. As it comes in, just kind of sweeps in a little bit for that neck, the neck of the bottle. I just do it kind of squiggly. You know how it's got like those ridges, those little edges and bumpiness for the neck of those mason jars. And then swoop it in, just a little bit of a swoop. Bring it across. There we go. And then for the most part, I actually fill this all back in so that the outline's not too thick, because I will fill it in how I want. Touch of water, black paint. I did like to just do a little bit of like a curved line around the neck of the bottle to give it those creases, so like you can screw the lid back on, that sort of thing. Wash it off. You can go back to your background color, or that orangey color, and I just make sure, I just kind of go up to the black and make it super thin, like you don't see this thick outline. There, so it's a bit like a little bit less of the black. Alrighty. And then in terms of colors, to make it reflective on the jar, you can change up the colors. You can do honestly anything. I kind of did like gold and green, or like you could do orange. For more of a gold color, I would say yellow, touch of red, small touch of red, mostly yellow. And you can take this like tiny touch of black, or you can just use orange, right? You can use orange, a little extra yellow, tiniest touch of black ever. If you have yellow ochre, this is yellow ochre, you can just use something like this. It looks pretty much exactly like gold. And I'm just going to go around and just kind of sweep it around some of the, like that top of the jar. Swoops and curls down. Maybe, so what I'll do is for the firefly that's sitting in here, I'm just going to do the spiral. See that spiral? Wash this off. In the middle of it, I'm going to take white. So I'm going to take some white paint on my detailed brush. Just going to give a little bit of a blob and a little bit of a wing on each side, on both sides. Kind of looks like a Mickey Mouse sort of miniature face, but anyways, it's just like a blob with these little wings. So that's kind of what I did for my fireflies. I'll do more in a minute. So you don't want to start with the white first. You want to do it actually last. But you can take your white and very carefully just add these little highlights, like little white highlights along random spots of the jar. So like maybe I'll put a little comma here. As long as it's kind of rounded, it honestly looks like a highlight, a bit of a reflection. Put a little bit there. You could take some green because we're going to be putting some grass. It's probably picking up a bit of green. Yellow, dot of blue, touch of white. I actually don't mind if it's touching orange. So if you pick up a bit of orange, it turns into a muddier green. There's a little bit of green in here. All right. So save that green or just mix some more later. I'm going to use this brush again for the green. So just a little bit of white, yellow, touch of blue, depending on how much blue or minty green or teal you want it to look. I am mixing over top of my orange. I want it muddied down. A little bit of water. Take my muddy green paint. I like to start towards the top, and I kind of work around the jar. So a little bit into the black. See, you just go along the top layer. And it's not like you're making as much grass as you did with the black. It's supposed to be nighttime, so you don't really see all that much. More paint. I'm going to, in how the jar is sitting, I'm just kind of sweeping the grass so it looks like it's just being folded over from the jar, leaning against it. Maybe I'll put in some more, just layer in some grass right below. So you work and go lower and just overlap the ones that are above, and now you have a bit of layering. Cool. Show you a tiny bit of yellow ochre just in case. So if you want to do yellow ochre, so it's basically if you have raw sienna, honestly, sort of the same color. It's basically like you're making a bit of almost like a brown. So it's mostly yellow, a little bit of red, tiniest touch of black, and a smidge of white too to give it sort of like a golden browny color. This is raw sienna or yellow ochre, so yellow. If you have orange, you can just start from orange, take yellow, tiniest dot of black, okay, and a little bit of white. And then I'm going to take more yellow because it's more yellowy for sure. Okay. I'm going to do the little fireflies. So take your yellow ochre or raw sienna, even gold. Just going to do some little swirls. Tiny swirl. Little tiny ones. Maybe a bigger one. Maybe a little bit up here. Wash it off. Take white. A little blob. Oops. Touch something else, okay? A little blob. A little bit of a wing on each side. Tiny dot. Dot, wing on each side. Bigger ones, bigger dots. You can even just get away with a little dot if you prefer. Okay. So after that, anything you can do, any little touch-ups that you need to do. If you need to. So if I streak black back into my grass, it can soften it up, break it up a bit more, right? So you don't have to have it as green or as much green. You can also use either a flat brush or a super small detail brush. Take maybe a bit of white and a touch of water, and you can make some of these stars here. Or the brighter star. Here, make little plus lines. You can also just put an X through the middle. A little X here. And then you can stop whenever. I think that's everything. So thanks for painting with me. You can also touch up with a couple little dots even in your grass if you want super tiny distant firefly look. You can also do that with some yellow and white instead, or in addition to that. So we love seeing results. Show it on our Facebook page, Artist Palette Durham. Sign your name. Finish up with a few more watery stars. Especially if you want it coming from the jar. Water, white, and it can be coming mostly from that jar. Thanks guys, thanks for joining me. Maybe you'll paint with me another time. You can check out our website, artistpaletedurham.com, for more upcoming events. We have lots of events, even past tutorials. You can see it on our YouTube page. Thanks everyone, bye!